What's up, guys? Your agent Tyler Wayrung here, and today we're going to be doing a book review on the book Set for Life by Scott Trench. Scott Trench is the CEO of Bigger Pockets and a financial analyst, financial guru, house hacker, kind of all things real estate, and a big fan of the real estate community just because of his involvement with Bigger Pockets and just an all-around really smart dude. Runs the Bigger Pockets Money podcast, and highly suggest you check that out. But guys, this book is probably my most gifted book. It used to be Rich Dad Poor Dad, but this is a lot more applicable and it resonates with a lot more people. So I share a lot with folks kind of really starting out life, if you will. So really folks in like graduating college, high school, or just kind of getting started with their career. A lot of great life advice, wisdom around finances, money, kind of all things life in general. But highly recommend you check this out. I'm going to talk about a couple highlights and really big impacts I got from the book, but it won't do the book justice. So with that, let's jump into it. All right, guys, so Scott kind of starts out talking about what set for life means. And he calls it really having a life-changing state of wealth as rapidly as possible, kind of acquiring that as soon as you can. And this book is a lot about a different kind of set of financial rules. So a lot of people think of the American dream in sense of working 30 or 40 years, building up a 401k and trying to retire from that. Well, this is really about chasing financial freedom in a period of 5 to 10 years. So it's a totally different ball game, which comes with a totally different set of rules than I think a lot of us were taught by our parents and grandparents who grew up in a different era. So this book, he really doesn't try to convince you of anything. He says, if you're reading this, I assume you kind of share that ideal and you do want to achieve financial freedom at an early age or a much shorter time period than normally, or that is what is normal, quote unquote. So the book is really carved out into 3 sections, and he calls them the 3 different stages of wealth. And so the first is kind of getting average Joe from 0 or negative net worth up to $25,000 of wealth creation. And then the second part of the book is from $25,000 to $100,000. And the last book is 100 to financial freedom. And so kind of all those different categories have a different things that work better for them and different tactics and strategies within. So it's a great way to kind of carve out the book and really start you from nothing all the way up to what do you do when you have 100,000 and beyond amount of assets, and how some good things to do there. So one of the big reasons I really love this book is he kind of starts out with talking about the financial impact of your housing decisions. And being in the real estate industry, loving real estate investing in general, this really resonates with me. But I think he also calls out that housing is the largest expense for the majority of Americans. So obviously that's going to have some financial impact on your lifestyle, kind of how much money you have to spend on other things, how fast you can build wealth, and what your savings rate is going to be, all bases back to that housing decision. So he kind of talks about the 5 different ways to buy a house, starting from level 1, which is buying a luxury house or buying your dream home as soon as you're starting in life, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is buying a house hack. So I highly recommend House Hacks, and I'm a super big fan of it. I think it's an incredible way to get started in real estate investing. But Scott talks a lot about here, it's also the most financial advantageous way to start. He gives a lot of data about house hacking. He gives you lots of good questions to ask yourself to see if you're ready for a house hack, if you're prepared for it, and if it's the right for your situation. And he also gives you examples of each of the other 5 stages, and some of them are pretty comical. And I'm sure if you read this, someone's face will pop up when you start to read this examples, because you'll probably know someone in each one of the different categories who has either made a mistake or has done things the right way. So very good stuff there. Highly recommend you check that out. And so the next stage of the book, kind of going from $25,000 to $100,000, he really just talks about, you might be able to save $25,000 up but really going from 25 to 100, and it's really hard to do that by savings alone. So you need to start acquiring assets to help you build up that next level of wealth creation. And a big reasons in here again are coming from real estate and how do you turn housing into your biggest expense? How do you turn that into an income producing asset? And he talks a lot about how just climbing the corporate ladder is just too slow. If you have any dreams of being financially independent early, then really the corporate ladder, I mean, it's set up for those folks who are following, that 30, 40-year period. So it's really hard to compete with those folks and to get things done faster. And then going from $100,000 to financial freedom, he has a lot of good stuff there around the third part, but I'm going to read a quick quote around why even consider this in the first place. So why pursue financial freedom? Financial freedom delivers exactly what it implies: freedom. Those who attain financial freedom are beholden to no job, boss, or company. They are free to choose how they direct their day in its entirety without the need to generate income. They are free to live life as it was meant to be lived. So, I mean, if that doesn't, sound aspiring to you, then this is probably not the book. But I think, I don't know about you guys, but having more freedom around what to do in your day-to-day, your life, is definitely what drives me, and that's why this book kind of gives a lot of tactical advice on how to implement these strategies. So in this next category, he talks about the 4 levels of finances. So the first level is being cash flow negative, and these are the people who spend more every month than they have coming in as income. So they do that via credit, but these kind of folks typically have a negative or 0 net worth, and is not a position you want to be in. I'm sure you can all think of someone who lives their life like this, but that's what he calls level 1 as cash flow negative. So level 2 is cash flow neutral, and this is where the majority of the population fits in. These people have a modest savings, have a low to relatively slow growing net worth, mostly due to automatic deductions to 401k and things of that nature, but they're saving a very small portion of their income, and these folks are also typically subject to lifestyle creep, which means when they get a raise and their financial situation typically gets better, they'll usually go buy another liability with those extra money. So let's say they save $500 a month, they get a $2,000 a month raise. They're probably going to figure out a way, subconsciously, to buy another liability or two, a boat or a new car that really eat up most of that new wage that they got, and now they're back to where they're comfortable saving that $500 a month. So, I'm sure you can resonate with someone who might be, in that situation, but those are the people he would classify as level 2, cash flow neutral. Level 3 is cash flow positive. These are people who live well below their means. They save a large portion of their take-home pay and are typically acquiring assets at a fast pace. And so if you're starting this journey, most of you will start in level 2 and 3, and the goal is to get to 3 as quick as possible so you could start acquiring those assets, start having a high savings rate to put towards those assets. And then level 3 is financially free. Obviously, that's the goal where you hope to end up. The one thing I wanted to call out here is that he talks about, when you think of most folks being financially free or not having to work for money, you think about, sitting on the beach with Mai Tais and little umbrellas in your drink and getting massages. But he talks about most of the people he knows in this category are some of the hardest working people in the world. But the difference is they're working for something they're passionate about, or something that their life is centered around, or people who master a hobby enough to turn it into a business that becomes even more successful. So just because you're financially free doesn't mean you're quote unquote retired and you're just done doing anything, although you can be if that suits you. But he talks about most folks just have the freedom to start to choose what they focus their life energy into, which I just think is super powerful. So lots even more reasons why you want to try to get to that level 4 of financial freedom. All right, guys, I'm going to hit on 1 or 2 more topics from this book, and then we'll go ahead and wrap. But one of these really resonates with me because I get asked this question a lot, and Scott's advice is kind of exactly the way I think through this, and he gave me even some more ammo, if you will, to kind of answer this. But this is around picking individual stocks. People will always ask you, what are you investing in? What's a good stock to buy? Things like that. Scott says in here, do not pick individual stocks, exclamation point. Kind of no room for any gray area there. Definitely, straightforward on not to pick individual stocks. And here's the 2 reasons he cites in the book. Number 1, he says your competition is out of your league. You're not even in the same ballpark. You're not even in the same state that the ballpark is in. Like, you're so far out of your league here, because your competition is someone who has likely an MBA or higher degree in finance or corporate strategy. These are people who attend shareholder meetings. They probably live relatively close to Wall Street. They golf with executives, and they very typically narrow their expertise in a very small sliver of the market. So, for example, the insurance industry, and they become just absolute masters. They know every single thing that's going on in their particular industry. And when these people have a successful career, it's when they beat the market by 1 to 2%. So they're not, going out and quadrupling returns and things like that. If they beat it by 1 or 2%, that's a great year. And they're able to charge a very high fee for being able to do that. So it kind of justifies their time doing all that. But for the individual person, it just doesn't make sense. And so a stock pick from your uncle or a book you read or something you heard on a podcast, you might get lucky. And he talks about, you'll have the trolls out there that say, oh, I bought Apple and quadrupled my return. And that's great. And you will have some wins, but you're not going to be able to do this repetitively and to continue that success, picking individual stocks and having them all go up. So it's best not even to start in the first place. Reason number 2 is that the alpha isn't worth it. And he uses the word alpha, which just means the return you get in excess of the market return. So if the market did 10% and you did 12, that's a 2% alpha. So basically how much you can beat what the normal market will give. This is not worth it unless you're managing hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. So just, in that example before, if you beat the market by 1 or 2% and you have $10,000 in there, you're talking peanuts there. These guys who we talked about before, your competition, they're managing hundreds of millions of dollars. So that 1 or 2% is a very large chunk of money, and it makes it worth it. But it's not worth it for you. So he actually gives the example to make $50,000. You'd almost have to have $2.5 to $5 million in this account that you're using to beat the market by 1%. And if you're going to do all that for $50,000, I think you can probably find a better use for your time. So what do you do? Pick index funds. You get a broad selection of the whole entire economy. You're very diversified. If someone shoots up, you get a piece of that. If someone goes down, you also have a piece of that, but not that one person is not going to take you out of the game. You have to look for consistent returns over a long period, which for the most of the time, index funds outbeat the market. In fact, Warren Buffett is even quoted to say that when he dies, he wants all of his wealth set into an index fund and not let his family touch it, so they don't have to think about it, and they know they're going to get above average or even average returns for the rest of history. So if all that doesn't kind of sway your opinion, then I guess good luck to you, Mr. Wall Street, and hope it all works out sincerely, but do not recommend it. All right, and then the last thing, guys, while you're on this journey, or any journey in particular, he talks about the importance of tracking your progress, whether it's tracking your spending, your expenses. You need to track your net worth, and then the other thing is track your time. A lot of people say we don't have time to do this, and he talks about journal your time and see where you're actually spending it, and potentially or likely you're going to have areas that you don't realize that you're spending a large portion of your time doing. So I've really learned a lot when I've started to track my net worth. And not particularly over a short term, but when you look back a year or two and you see it hopefully start to grow, you can start to correlate with what things did I do in that time period that helped me grow. And when you start to look back and see where you started, it helps give you more motivation to continue and want to continue to drive it up even higher. So a like or share would be eternally grateful for. But with that, I'm Tyler Wayrung, and we'll catch you next time. I didn't really do this book justice. These were just a couple gold nuggets that I pulled out of it. So again, I highly recommend you check it out. and share it with someone you know. Just trust me, if you know someone kind of younger, just starting their journey in life, just graduating college, or starting a new career, buy them this book. I don't get anything for doing that, but I tell you, you won't be disappointed. It's an excellent book, a very quick read, and very simple. He breaks things down into very simple terms and explains things much better than I likely did here. But guys, hope you guys have value out of this. If you did, drop me a like below. I'd greatly appreciate it. But with that, I'm Tyler Wayrung, and we'll catch you next time.